Paul Buffington. I'm with Atlassian, and I'm super excited to talk to you today about a topic that's close and near and dear to me. My role in Atlassian, I come from 10 years of ITSM consulting background, and I've been at Atlassian 3.5 years, and I've loved this because I get a chance to work with customers and teams. They're really changing the way that they do IT support, IT projects, and I'm going to share some best practices, whether you use the Atlassian products or not, that you can take back to your teams and make use of. And so that's my goal today, is in this few minutes we'll spend together that you can get these ideas and put them back in practice. Now, Atlassian's mission, how many here have at least are familiar with Atlassian and some of the products we have, like Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, so there's some familiarity. But our mission is, there's 2,800 plus people around the globe today, and it really is the driving force in the way that we think about whether it's support, engineers, product developers. When they get up in the morning thinking about what we're doing is how we're actually going to work with teams, and we have this mission of unleashing the potential in every team. What I love about Atlassian is we don't start with products. We actually think about how do teams actually work and function in their people and their culture. I'm going to spend a few minutes on this because that's actually where it begins. A lot of the challenges that we have in IT support today are focused on this aspect. The other area is around their practice, the work. How does the work meet up to how they're working together, and then ultimately do the tools support that? Now, the age that we live in today, I haven't rented a car in 5 years. Traveling, it's all Uber and Lyft, all of these services we depend on. There's so much a part of our day-to-day life in our businesses. What used to be something internally as a product is now a service that has a digital component. And for all of the IT processes that I would spend time talking about, I picked incident management. I had an opportunity to talk to a lot of IT operations teams, and I want to focus on that one. And so, how many in here work in IT operations? A few. And how many of you know people that work in IT operations that you interact with? And I would say that the hands go up as well. So it's a really important topic, and what I want to focus on is not that the Wi-Fi is slow, the printer doesn't work. I mean, those impact day-to-day life. It's the major incident. The ones that are having the impact on my customers in my organization that leave them at a standstill. We know the impact on it. I don't have to go through the dollar and the impact to the business. So what can a team take away that if they're in this process and they're working through this process, that they can work better as a team and get to a restored service faster? And then ultimately, what I'm starting to see in my practice, I come from an ITO world and ITSM implementation, I'm seeing problem and incident come very, very closely together in this approach. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. Now I'm going to start here, and you're probably wondering, what does a helicopter have to do with incident response? It's a lot, in that it's taught me, and I've carried a lot of these lessons for. I spent a lot of time in Coast Guard helicopters for about 10 years in the back. One thing that I've always carried forward, and I've talked to other folks that have been in IT, is when we have the 3 a.m. call, we have a plan. One thing in the Coast Guard, we always flew and we practiced and we knew we had a playbook. And this is what we're going to do for this type of response. An IT team, and major operations, maybe I manage multiple services, I need the same exact thing. And so here's the 5 best practices I want to focus on. First of all, it starts with the people in the team. We can't go right to the technology and the process. It has to begin with them. We also need a game plan. I can't figure it out when I get on the 3 a.m. bridge. I might support 10 different services. So what can I do with my game plan? I can go to that game plan, pull it out, if I haven't touched that service in 30 days, and start working on it. The other thing is I need a way to be able to communicate. This is one of the things that has really hampered a lot of IT operations teams and IT overall. How can I better communicate with my stakeholders, with my customers if they're externally? And then the other part of that is just capabilities. Now, there's a lot of area that I had to trim out of here on this, that we have a lot documented and written on this. I'll point you where you can find out more. But the team, the way they work today, if I fast forward 6 months from now, that capability may need to adjust because of what's going on in the business. New technologies, maybe I'm merging another team as organizations coming in through an acquisition. So is it adaptable to the way that we will work in the future? And then finally, where I'm going to spend a lot of my time, which a lot of teams skip over, and I've done a lot of just learning from customers and research, is on the post-incident review. And I'll talk about best practices here that you can take back and start putting into practice. Some of the things that we've done in Atlassian is we have SRE teams that manage the services of Jira, Cloud, Confluence Cloud, those teams are autonomous in the way they work, but they have these best practices, and I've seen this confirmed by many of the IT operations teams I work with. So let's dig in. First of all, oftentimes we want to focus on the technology. It's an enabler what the team would do, but I would make the point that if there's challenges and struggles there, it's probably not the technology. It might be part of it, but is there a team element that I want to focus on? And that's where Atlassian, I love the team that we have at Atlassian, has actually done a lot of research around this, and I'll share more about that story. But first of all, what are some areas I can focus on? First of all, creating a culture of collaboration and innovation. At Atlassian, we do quarterly ship-its. It was something new to me when I came in, and it's been a lot of fun that I've worked cross-functional teams, and we dedicate 24 hours where someone can go and work on either product or improving the way that Atlassian runs, and the innovation and the contributions across the organization are amazing. I've talked to customers now that have taken that idea and they've maybe brought it into a smaller part of their team, that they do a half day where they dedicate saying, you're an IT operations team, figure out something that's help us improve, and then they present back to the team. Now, do they get a big, an Amazon card or something like that? No, it's the bragging rights that we won ship it for that quarter. That's a prize trophy. I've talked to some customers that do that. It would be amazing. That small investment in how it brings teams together and the things that they will share is really super valuable. The other one is really learning from the diversity. Teams will move across in other areas and come in from different backgrounds, and that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about Atlassian. And we take the effort to learn from, where did that person come from? What are they bringing to that team that we can learn from? Lunch and learns, a brown bag where I can come down and sit down and we spend time together and learning in that. And then finally the last one, I added this one because I've seen this a lot. You've heard it. Okay, it's the development's fault. They shipped that last night, they broke the application, and they throw it over the wall. They're on that side of the wall, the silo, right? Well, through one customer I know of, they actually have development teams and the IT operations, when they're run separately, they're meeting together, they're sharing. And so building that empathy across there is not that you're the enemy on the other side, we're on the same team and organization, how can we work better together? These are just 3 simple highlights, there's many more here, but I want to share with you something really practical that you can take back. And that is, as Atlassian was scaling and we were growing very quickly, we realized that our teams who were a lot of us are remote. I think our 3rd largest office is remote employees out of our 9 offices. It's a lot. So how can we work more effectively together? And so Atlassian went and they said, all right, let's study our teams, which ones are doing really well, and let's look for the attributes that are really valuable there that we can learn from. And what we created internally about 2 years ago was what we call a team playbook. We found it was so valuable and started to share with customers, we wanted to outsource this. We want to share it with the world. This is something that if you use an Atlassian product or not, you can take the team playbook and you can put it to use. So let me give you some highlights from what it can do. And I've actually used this with my team on an offsite just recently. We did a quarterly offsite, we go through a health check. And that's the first place you start. If you're a service team, you're a project team, or you're a leadership team, we have a health check in about 30 minutes. You as a team of 5 or 6, a team of 30, can go through and say, how are we doing on this topic? Thumbs up, and it opens up conversation saying, well, why are you saying it? You're the ones that sum down. But here's what it does for the results. It gives you as a team, now you know in the last, let's say you did a health check a quarter ago. Well, if you see there on the bottom, we're not doing well on effective partnerships. Maybe as an IT operations team working with the dev teams, there's something here. What it does is allows you to give a focus saying, let's go and work on this aspect for improvements. And so what Atlassian has done now with this is we've created different plays for different types of teams. Are you a project team and you need to improve upon the way that you do metrics or the way that you manage the flow of your work? And so here's a couple for incident. There's an incident response values. There's specific plays for different types of roles. And these are very practical ways that you can put into play. Here's what we're going to work on. Now, here's the amazing thing of this I've seen both in engineering, IT, even within my team of solution engineering, it brings folks closer together. We are more collaborative in what we're going to do, and you start to move the needle towards improvement. So that's why I started today with with teams. It's easy to skip over this. What I encourage you to do, they're out there and available. You can take and use them. You can do them in Word. You can put them on a whiteboard. we do have them in our Confluence products. You can use them as a Confluence page, so it's collaborative. The whole idea here is to take it back and make it yours. It's like a cookbook. I'm not going to cook a meal just like Jamie Oliver. I'm going to maybe try and do something like it, but it will allow me at least make it mine and make it work in our organization. And this is an area that Atlassian is continuing to learn from, and we're going to continue to share more on. So, next up, the playbook. Now we're kind of looking at how the team's working. I have 10, 15 services that I support. I may not have an outage on one of those for 30 days. When that outage bell rings, or I get that alert, it comes in through, my Slack, or I want to know where I should go. And so that's what the playbook is. What we have found for a team is really important. This really comes from an ITIL world, is what qualifies as a major incident? And what is the process that we'll follow? Does it our standard incident response, or is there an additional incident response? The other thing in here that is really important that a lot of teams are playing catch up on is, I'm going to do email broadcasts to certain stakeholders. Email's probably not the best way to communicate with them. So what is not only how you'll communicate, but what is your plan to communicate and how you'll do that? We also need to ensure we have best resources. In this day and age, because of the way that we work across with dev teams, different delivery teams, do we have the right resources on call to be able to bring them in? And then the one I want to focus on a lot is conducting post-incident reviews. And I'll talk more about why that is the case and why we should spend more time there, and publishing those learnings. And then the last one, I spent a lot of time flying around in helicopters. The reason being is we knew the playbook, but we had to practice. What's interesting to me of some IT operations teams I've talked to, no, we don't really run through it. I met another team recently. They don't run a full-on simulation, but they talk through how they would respond to it. They review their playbook. They do it on a quarterly basis in the different ways. It lets them improve and get better at what they're doing. So obviously technology is a great enabler of collaboration in that, but really the tell of a team, especially IT operation, is how effectively can they communicate. And so one of the things we have found is a way that a team can centralize that communication. We've had dashboards for years, but a way that someone can subscribe and consume, and they can actually proactively communicate. Because what happens when an outage happens? Everyone's hitting me with, chats, inbound emails, they're submitting tickets in the portal. So I need a way to get ahead of that. And what that does for me is I gain, acceptance, and if I openly communicate with my stakeholders, especially if they're outside, and many of us have experienced outages, AWS and some of those, and they openly communicate, the service is down, here's what we're doing, you're more willing to trust that who you're working with. It's the same with your stakeholders. So what we've done is we've actually brought a status page in as a part of our team, is now a part of our team. A lot of customers turn to it because it's not hosted on their infrastructure, especially when you have external services, but I'm finding a lot of teams are using it for their internal services communications. What this does is allows a team to come in, we already have pre-built templates, your plan is halfway in place there, you just have to figure out when you're going to execute, and then from the end user perspective, they can subscribe to it and know when your service is, when something's going on from a maintenance standpoint, or there's a Sev 1 outage. I have a lot more I can say on incident communications, but I just wanted to highlight that part because it's so key and critical. Whatever you're using for tools today is what's your game plan and how you'll execute. That should be written into your game plan. The next one is really around the way that we work openly in a team. And chat ops, I won't spend any time on that here, but it is an important aspect. We've moved away from, thankfully, the 3 AM phone bridge. I'm sure a lot of you have spent time on that. And now because we have ready rooms and chat and video bridges, it makes that much easier. I want to focus on 2 aspects, and that is really the collaboration of our documents. This actually comes from internal Atlassian and several customer examples where they've taken all their run books, which is really their playbook for the outage, but it's at the technical level. Where's that service? How do I connect to it? What are the common things I'm going to check? What I've found with this in talking to customers, that first on-call IT ops agent touching that can find a 30% improvement on that time because they're getting right to the area they need. Whereas if I have to remember all of this, there's no way. Oh yeah, it's in the SharePoint on Word doc here. I don't remember where that's at. By moving it here, and Confluence is the way I've seen a lot of teams do it, it's collaborative, it's reviewable. It becomes a living document that moves forward with the team. All right, automation. Now, it was a great question in the last session about, will automation replace my job? I'm a big proponent of automation AI, but I think it just makes us work smarter and better, and that we can focus on other things. So automation from that regard, especially when we start crossing over and our development teams are working with us on the release and IT operations is embedded or working in hand with that release, we want to bring automation in. So I use an example out of Service Desk. Whatever your automation is, it's how can I take those little things that I'm doing, classification of incident, or last month we missed this area here for this type of incident, how can we improve upon that? And so what we do is we use automation to go into an incident and either augment it with information, reclassify, reroute it, bring other team members in. And so in Service Desk, we have an automation that's written that we don't need an admin. We actually allow the team lead for that to be able to create the rules and manage them, because we believe that automation will actually evolve with the way that they're doing their support. And that's what we're seeing here in the automation. It'll come up in just a second. I can change these rules as needed to fit the support process. And so it's because it's done from the GUI versus having to always involve a developer. But I think automation is such a key in that it can save me time in these areas that are very repetitive in my process. All right, final topic. I said it was going to be a fast one, right? But I wanted to get to these key topics, so hopefully this has been valuable at this point. And this is one just from my years of consulting in the ITSM world. Major incident happens, I go through, I put some information in a field, and I tell maybe some folks about it, and I hope they run the monthly report. I hope they run the weekly report, right? And if they do, someone might see a trend or that. What's happening, especially a Sev 1 or Sev 2 incident, you're losing and leaving a lot of valuable insights on the playing field that should be learned at that time. And so what we are, and I've seen this with customers, our own internal teams, we always run a post-incident review that is very collaborative, and that we want to learn and be able to take these improvements and put it back either into the service, the product, or the way that we work. What Google did, it was an interesting study they did back in 2016, they actually found that 70% of post-incident review or classification is lost, it's forgotten. Why? Because it's locked in a tool and it's not in my collaborative review process. And so what we want to do is bring it in a way, and this is just an example from our own internal teams. I just saw this with a financial company recently. They have the same exact thing, that they have the same approach in the classify. They have it in their Jira Service Desk ticket, it's linked to it, and they start this whole process. And for that customer, they used to have problem management, which still kind of goes on. They've brought some of that capability into this team in the incident. Because we know from an ITIL world, they don't care about root causes, restore service. But they should care about it in the fact that they can now do continuous service improvement, especially if they're tied to that service. And so here's the tips or the effective things on PIRs. First of all, we need a process that unlocks this understanding. Not technology, but a way that we'll do and view the review. Some of this may be done in problem management, but how do we bring that into the way that incident's working? Or in some teams that I've worked with, they don't have problem management. This is a way that you could have the most valuable problem investigations going on. The other thing oftentimes is, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. And we want to diffuse that. And there's actually very easy ways to do that. If you start with, and really who's leading it is able, and that's why we have a play on this in our playbook, is to really get people to understand that this is not about the blame, that you changed that DNS record and you took down, that system. Well, no, what was it that we missed that would potentially prevent that? Also, we want to have this, reportable process that I'm reviewing as a collaborative team, because I'm pulling developers in, I'm pulling other stakeholders, I'm pulling IT operations, my DBA, whoever. I want a place that I can go through and review all of this information. So as I go through this, I'm answering all the who's, the 5 who's. I think there's in a document I'll share in a second, some valuable information. As I go through that process, it's unlocking, okay, here's the timeline, here's what we learned at this point, and here's the key of it. Not only will I publish known errors and KB entries, I'm going to have some bugs potentially to put in the backlog of the software team, and that's what happens at Atlassian. On some of our major outages that we've had with Jira, there have been some great enhancements and improvements around our products and services. I found the same thing with our customers as well as I've talked to them. And then finally, we just don't share it within the team, we publish it. The financial company I was talking to, they actually have a dashboard that at an executive level, they can come in and understand what happened with that PR, what were the actions taken out of it. That's valuable there because I'm delivering value back to my stakeholders in the organization around what really is continuous service improvement. Yep. So to learn more, we've actually have a playbook around this. We've taken what we do internally and we've published that out. Take a look at it. It's under where we've launched our new Jira Ops. We've dedicated a product just for IT teams that brings a lot of these concepts together. Take a look at these ideas in here. There's a deeper dive into how do you do PIRs and such. All right, I'll be at the Atlassian booth afterwards here. Would love to chat more with you and share about this. Obviously, I'm very passionate about it because of what it does for teams. So thank you, and combine those with others.